That's right. No, that's not what I meant. So, just like you see the modern day leaders, there's a lot of nepotism, a lot of greed, and you see in practically every country in the world. I'm not going to talk about America because it's so apparent in America, isn't it? It is so apparent in America what's happening with the leaders, how he plays favorites and makes money from businesses, isn't it? And using this particular individual who should remain nameless, he who cannot be named. That's a reference to another movie. Anyway, so that's the type of leaders we have in the world today. And I was just thinking, practically the same thing's happening in the UK right now with their new prime minister. I think it was a political statement. And the only real good leader we have in the world today is Modi.
Modi.
Because he's a brahmachari, has no family, has no personal thing, no personal gain, isn't it?
Maybe.
Well, you're being sarcastic. So people want Ram Raj, and that's what Ram Raj means. Not only that you're worshiping Ram, but your leader is like Ram. I mean, not like Ram in the sense that he's God, but like Ram in the sense that he's willing to sacrifice everything for the welfare of the citizens. Not only he's willing to, but he knows what the welfare of the citizens should be. See, it's one thing with good intentions, just like there's a statement in English, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You ever hear that statement before?
Yes.
So you can have so many good intentions, but you could be doing violence. Just like if you have some disease, and I'm not a doctor, and I can have the best intentions in the world that I want to cure you from that disease, but I may kill you by the cure I give you, right? So not good intentions is not enough. But the king actually has to be Rajarshi, has to know about the higher values of life, Hare Krishna, and has to be able to follow the brahmanas. So Lord Ram was like that. So Lord Ram, then he decided that Sita Devi had to be sent away. So he went to Lakshman and said, Lakshman, I want you to drop Sita Devi off in the forest. And Lakshman thought, oh my God, here's another request. And it was bad enough he had to put Sita Devi in the fire, of course. But we'll see that Sita Devi came out and was brought out and was actually protected by Agni Devi. But now he's asking me to drop her off in the forest, and she's pregnant. This is cruel. And because of all these things that happened between Ram and Lakshman, Lakshman had gotten a benediction that that would be the last time he would be Ram's younger brother. He just didn't like being the younger brother. Because in those days, the older brother got the right to tell the younger brother what to do. And that also applied to have an older sister. What do you think, Anirudh? You like that rule?
No.
So, because that was the etiquette, isn't it? The older brother. Was it on Motobai? One time in Fiji, I made a big mistake. I was giving an initiation, and this lady was taking an initiation, and the devotees told me her name was Motima. You understand? And which basically could also mean fat lady. So the time of initiation, I said Motima. Everyone started laughing. What did I say? So anyway, so Lord Ram told Lakshman, you have to drop her off in the forest, and Lakshman didn't want to become the brother of Ram anymore. So therefore, when he appeared as Balaram, he was the older brother. But Krishna never listened to him either. It's an interesting thing. I was listening to a class the other day. Prabhupada said, Krishna shows that he's actually the, let's say, the origin of all other incarnations, because he's the only incarnation of God that disobeys the rules. The only appearance or avatar that disobeys the rules. I mean, Ram was Maryada Purushottam, whereas Krishna is against he's the opposite. Maryada. He's the opposite of Purushottam. He's the person who breaks the rules. He lies. Like Lord Ram, what is it? Eka Patni Vrata, one wife, one arrow, one word. And Krishna was the opposite. Many wives, no word. And many arrows. Not only arrows, he picks up chariot wheels. Right? Ram never picks up a chariot wheel to fight with. So anyway, so Lakshman, he agrees, okay, I'll take her in the forest, take her and drop her off in the forest. And he tells Sita, we're going for a ride in the forest. He didn't have the heart to tell her that you're going to be dropped off in the forest. I mean, it's painful. How can you tell someone, a lady who's pregnant, your husband told me to just drop you off in the forest? So he basically says, because Sita had been asking to go to the forest before she gives birth. She was attached to the forest because she had spent so much time in the forest with Lord Ram. 14 years in the forest, that's a long time, so she really liked the forest. So she thought, let me take an excursion. So Lakshman said, we're going to take you into the forest. And she thought, good, we're going to see the forest. And so he takes her to the forest and says, you're getting out here. And she says, what? He said, Lord Ram said to drop you off here, right outside the ashram of Valmiki Muni. So, pretty upsetting. Anyway, so she gets dropped off in the forest and goes in the ashram of Valmiki Muni, takes shelter of Valmiki Muni, has the two children, Lava and Kush. We know that. And then there's Ram back in the kingdom, enjoying the kingdom, of course feeling separation from Sita Devi. And even when he had to do a sacrifice, like the Rajastri sacrifice, he had to have a deity of Sita Devi next to him. Because the injunction is that when you do a sacrifice, you have to have your wife next to you if you're married. So he had this deity of Sita Devi. So someone may say this is extremely cruel. Well, there's the external reason for that, which is called the exoteric reason. And that reason is he wanted to show the duty of a king. But that's not really what's going on. Because in each and every one of the Lord's activities, there's exoteric and esoteric things going on. That means external things going on and internal things. Just like we hear from Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya Sadhanam Vinashaya Chadushkritam. Krishna comes down to annihilate the miscreants, establish religious principles, and protect the devotees. Yeah, fine, okay. But that's not really the reason Krishna comes down, because as Prabhupada explains, Krishna could have his energies do these things. Krishna has multifarious energies. Prashif Shakti Urvidai Vishrites Bhavalti Gyanavala Kriyacha. There's no need for Krishna to do it. No, absolutely no need. Krishna can have his devotees, Krishna can have his energies do it. So there's something else going on. So the reason Krishna comes down, Ram comes down, or any of the incarnations, is to taste ras. Ras means basically taste, different tastes. Just like when you have food, there's different tastes. And I've given this example many times. When you have spices, there's different tastes in the spices. You all in India have like a garam masala. What does that mean?
Hot masala.
Yeah, what is a masala?
Spices.
It literally means a mixture. A mixture. So you have like a mixture of different spices that's hot. There's also other spices too that are not hot, right? Can you think of a spice that's not hot?
Salt.
Salt's not hot. That's good. Pretty good. And there's sweet spices. What's a sweet spice?
Fennel.
Yeah, or another one is cinnamon. Like that. So these are all different tastes. That's what a rasa is. Ras means a taste. So when we're talking about rasa theology, then we have to talk about the 5 basic tastes and the 7 indirect tastes. So the 5 basic tastes, you know what they are? No. 5 basic rasas are what?
Oh.
Neutrality. What's the next one?
Dasya. Servitude.
Dasha, yeah, servitude.
Sakya. Friendship.
Sakya.
Peranda.
What's that called in Sanskrit? Vatsalya.
Vatsalya.
And Madhurya. So those are the 5 basic tastes. And then you have the other tastes, which are the 7 indirect tastes, which flavor the direct tastes. It's like if you have a vegetable, like Corella, for example, that has a specific taste to it, but then you put some spices on Corella, or you may fry it or do something like that, and that flavors it in different ways. So there's indirect rasas like Adbhuta. What does Adbhuta mean?
Ghost.
No, not a Bhuta. Adbhuta. In shock. Shock. There's other ones like ghastliness. What is ghastliness? Ghastliness. Disgusting. Like when Parashuram made rivers of blood when he killed all the Kshatriyas. That's
Uncooked
called
tofu.
what?
Uncooked tofu.
Uncooked tofu. Okay, that's ghastly. So that's not good for us. And then you have ghastliness. You have humor. You know, Krishna is very funny, especially as his coward boyfriend Madhumangal. Humor. There's fear. There's chivalry. So Krishna likes to enjoy all these different rasas. He's called Rasaraj. You heard that statement? Rasaraj. Means the king of rasas. So in order to enjoy all the rasas, just like we have in this world, the reflection of these rasas. This is not, let's say, reality in this world. We're actually living in a reflected world. That's described by Krishna in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. What is the example that Krishna gives in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita to illustrate the reflection of this world?
Upside down banyan tree.
Yeah, banyan tree with its what down and what up.
It's leaves down and roots up.
Yeah, branches down and roots up. So this world is like that. It's sort of like a reverse of the spiritual world, a reflection. It's like a reflection that appears in darkness, they describe. So therefore, but Krishna likes to enjoy these things, and these things, these rasas or relationships or tastes give him happiness. And so specifically there's separation. Just like you see, sometimes you read the news, sometimes a man will go off to fight a war or join the army or something, and then he comes back and his family is very happy to see him. I don't know if you ever seen pictures after World War II when the soldiers came back. Famous pictures, you know, there. Everyone's embracing in the street, so happy like that. And all the ladies are feeling separation from their beloved. I mean, this is happening. And so Krishna wants to enjoy that, what we call vipralamba. And Krishna's devotee, especially Krishna's consort, here we're talking about Sita Devi, but in other cases we're talking about Vishnu Priya. In other cases we're talking about the gopis of Vrindavan, specifically headed up by Srimati Radharani. they actually enjoy this particular loving exchange. Just like if you watch a Bollywood movie, which you all do, then you'll see there's all these different emotional exchanges, and fear sometimes, and separation, and crying. And if they didn't have those things, it would be quite a boring movie. Right? I mean, I'm just think about it. Krishna doesn't want to have a boring life. Like you always, some mundane stories have, well, they lived happily ever after. But Krishna isn't like that. He likes excitement. Every day is like an adventure and excitement. And so this tasting of the ras was performed or arranged by Krishna, and that's really why he sent Sita Devi away. And in essence, he was never separated. Ram was never separated from Sita Devi. I mean, you could say there was some separation, but they're actually, Ram and Sita are never separated. Just like Hanuman, because he loves Ram so much, when he opened up his chest, there was Ram and Sita. So don't think that Sita loves Ram any less, and Ram loves Sita any less than that. So there's no real separation, but it's an experience of different emotions, or bhav, and tastes in those emotions. So that's why practically in many of the pastimes of the Lord, you have this separation of the Lord from his beloved. And there's always an external reason. Like in the case of Ram, to be a good king. In the case of Krishna, the reason he left because he had his duty to do outside of Vrindavan, right? What was his duty?
Kill Kamsa.
Kill Kamsa. Not only kill Kamsa, but it's explained in the Gopal Champu by Srila Jiva Goswami that the external reason he didn't go back to Vrindavan is because if he went back to Vrindavan, then Jarasandha, who was what in relationship to Kamsa? Who was Jarasandha in relationship to Kamsa? His what?
Brother-in-law?
No, not brother.
Uncle.
Father-in-law.
Father-in-law.
Father-in-law. Jarasandha would have attacked Vrindavan. Just like he attacked Mathura. How many times did Jarasandha attack Mathura?
11.
No, more than that.
18 times.
18 times. And what did Krishna finally have to do with all the residents of Mathura to save them?
Put him in Dwarka.
Send them to Dwarka, how? By train? Through the air. He sent them through the air all the way to Dwarka, and Krishna constructed the city of Dwarka. So Krishna actually didn't go back to Vrindavan. This is just external. So we're just contrasting the external reason for Krishna's activities and the internal reasons for Krishna's activities. So Krishna didn't go back to Vrindavan because the residents of Vrindavan would have gotten attacked by Jarasandha and the other demons. So he didn't want to risk that because Krishna had killed Kamsa. Okay. So that's Krishna's external reason for not going back to Vrindavan. And of course we do have our Rath Yatra ceremony, which signifies the dragging of Krishna back to Vrindavan when Krishna met the residents of Vrindavan in Kurukshetra. And then, let's go to Lord Chaitanya and his separation from his wife. I mean, she was so morose feeling the separation from Lord Chaitanya that it's described that for each, she would chant japa. Now some people say for each round, she would only eat 1 grain of rice, but that's a little bit too small. It's for each round, each Hare Krishna mantra, she would have 1 grain of rice. That's how she did it. Some story, one devotee said for each round, 1 grain of rice. I mean, my God. Then you're going to have just 64 grains of rice. Okay, that's not enough. So for each mantra, she would use the grains of rice, actually, for each Hare Krishna mantra. And she was feeling so much separation. And the reason Lord Chaitanya, external reason Lord Chaitanya, separation. The external reason Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did that was to save the world. Because when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a householder, nobody took him seriously. Even his own students, they made fun of him. Why? What was he doing? He was chanting Gopi, Gopi, Gopi. And they said, no, chant Krishna's name. And then what did Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu do? He ran after them with a stick to beat his students. And everybody criticized Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya was thinking, wow. So Lord Chaitanya was thinking, I've come here to save everybody, and now I'm sending everyone to hell. Because they were criticizing him. So in this way, that's external. But internally, Vishnupriya was always connected to Lord Chaitanya through the mood of separation. So you see, there's actually external and internal reasons for everything the Lord does. And the internal reasons are the most important. Internal reason because he wants to taste. He said, just like with Lord Chaitanya's advent, external reason he comes down to save everybody. Internal reason he wants to understand the love that Radharani has for him. He wants to taste the ecstasy that his devotees have. And he wants to see himself through Radharani or his devotees' perspective, from their point of view. So that's internal. Because everything Krishna does, and this revolves around the psychology of God, everything Krishna does in any of his various expansions, incarnations, avatars, what have you, is all done for enjoyment. He doesn't have to do anything. We have to do things, just like you have to go to school, right? Yeah? Or you have to learn, at least. But Krishna doesn't have to. Krishna went to school only for how many days?
60.
What?
60.
No.
64.
64. Second guess. 64 days, and he learned everything in one day. He learned the whole subject matter for everything. Mathematics one day, nuclear physics the next day. No, seriously. I mean, he learned different languages another day. So Krishna doesn't have to. He just does things because he is enjoying. He's the supreme enjoyer. That's wonderful, isn't it? That's God's psychology. If you look at our psychology, we do things because of previous experience or because we have to. But Krishna is Swarat. He's completely independent, and up to Kama, he gets whatever he wants, whenever he wants it. So that's, because sometimes people ask, why did Krishna do this? Why did Krishna do that? Why does Krishna play a flute? Do you know anyone? Why does Krishna play a flute?
He wants to.
That's right. You just learned what I was telling you. There's no explanation. It's not because his mother sent him to a flute teacher when he was a kid, or his mother beat him with a flute or something. Like if I want to understand your psychology, Aniruddha, I'll just have to understand how your mother treated you. And then I can understand why you do what you do. Or how your sister treated you. But with Krishna, it's just like, he's Sarva Karna Isn't it? Ishwaro Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karna Karna. He's the cause of all causes. So there's no cause to anything in Krishna's nature, psychology. He does it because he is enjoying. So that therefore you can understand Krishna's activities. And if you can understand Krishna's activities, guess what? What is Krishna saying to you? Janma? Karma? Tattvadeham Punarjanma. What does that mean? Let's see translation.
You know?
Forget?
Janma karma chami divya. I'm going to give you a direct literal translation. My janma, my appearance, karma, my activities, chame div are transcendental. Both of those are transcendental. Divyam means transcendental. Evam yo veti tattva. One who understands them. This is actually an interesting word. Tattvataha means more than in truth. It means one who understands categorically what they are. It's really interesting. I just thinking about the Sanskrit in that verse, because tattva means that which is. In other words, something that is a category that is eternal. For example, Vishnu Tattva. You understand the category of God. Or Jiva, I hope I'm not getting too technical here. Jiva Tattva, the category of Jiva. So one who understands the nature of Krishna, basically the English word would be ontology, for those of you who learned English. So one who understands the actual nature of God and of God's activity. Janma karma chad medim evam yo veti, tat in truth, tatvataha. Chaktva deham. So we got a deham right now. What's a deham? The body. You are dehi. What's a dehi?
Person.
A dehi is the person who has a body. You understand? It's like a yogi is a person who does yoga. Deha is body. Dehi is the person who has the body. Anyway, chakra deham purnak. So one who gives up, chakra means basically gives up or throws away. Just like what we have the English word, it comes from that chuck. You know, chuck something away. Not choke it out, chuck. It's like you chuck this away. Yeah, chuck. Chuktva. One who gives that. Deham, one who gives out the body. Naitimam eti sojourn, never again. He will take another body. Or Arjuna, Arjuna. So the point is, if one can understand that simple truth about Krishna, that Krishna has a spiritual body and everything he does is for his own enjoyment, then he doesn't have to take birth again in the material world. Because then we understand our nature as persons who are meant to give enjoyment to Krishna. That's interesting. The persons who are meant to give Krishna, we're actually we're the objects of Krishna's enjoyment. And once we understand that, we don't go back to God. If we understand Jiveras, we'll fall into Krishna Das. Same thing. So I'm just tying all these different verses together. Anyway, it's an interesting analysis from the Ramayana, from Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and Lord Krishna's pastimes. Everything, and Krishna's enjoying separation. So, on that happy note, any questions or comments? Yes.
I have a question. I just cannot figure it out. When he said Lakshman he thought that in the next life he will be a bigger brother.
Yeah, older brother.
But Balaram is eternally Krishna's next expansion.
That's right.
So how you, because Lakshman came in a Treta Yuga.
Yeah.
But Krishna and Balaram, they are eternally like.
Yes, that's right.
So.
Pastimes say. Under Yoga Maya, Lakshmana is, that's also another ras. Anger is an indirect ras. So Lakshmana is basically a little angry at Ram. And he said, I don't want to be his older brother, his younger brother anymore. And so this goes from one, and there's Yoga Maya. Yoga Maya means that, I was just reading this pastime, where Balaram, this is such an interesting pastime. You know how the coward boys were stolen by Lord Brahma, coward boys, and the calves were stolen by Lord Brahma? You all know that story?
Yeah.
And so Balaram didn't even know what was going on until he asked Krishna, and Krishna actually told him. Because Balaram saw, of course, the reason is that when the coward boys and the calves were stolen by Lord Brahma, Balaram was getting ready for his birthday party. He wasn't with the coward boys. So, anyway, so Krishna expanded himself as all the coward boys and calves. And it turns out that the coward boys' mothers, they loved their sons more than ever before because they were all Krishna. And actually that's because they all wanted to have Krishna as their son. And Krishna was fulfilling their desire. And all the cows loved their older calves more than younger calves for the same reason. And Balaram was watching this happen. Like even the cows, they just like practically jumped off the hill to see their calves who were actually Krishna, because Krishna expanded himself as all the calves. And Balaram was saying, what's going on, Krishna? They're showing as much affection for their children or for the calves as they have for you. So it appears that Balaram didn't know what was happening. You understand? And then Krishna revealed to him what was happening. So these are different exchanges between Ram and Lakshman, or Balaram and Krishna. I mean, just like even you have that story of where Krishna doesn't agree with Balaram's arrangements for Subhadra's marriage. Who is Balaram arranging that Subhadra would get married to? Duryodhana. And then Krishna has to make this trick of telling Arjuna to kidnap Subhadra. And then Balaram wants to kill Arjuna, right? And Krishna just says no. Krishna's so tricky. He says, who's actually kidnapping who? Because Krishna arranged, he's so intelligent. Krishna arranged that Subhadra was driving the chariot. And Balaram just got angry at Krishna. Said, oh no, he's done it again. So it actually shows ontologically that Krishna is in a higher position than Balaram. But they have these exchanges. I mean, this is like loving exchanges, you know, joking, loving exchanges. This is the nature of God. I mean, that's really all we can understand about God, is that he's the supreme enjoyer. He enjoys rasas, he's compassionate. As far as understanding how he does things, that's not going to be possible. But the why is actually pretty easy to understand. He just wants to enjoy. Why does God do this? Why has God put us in the material world? Does he want to enjoy his suffering? No. Because he wants to enjoy with us. He wants us back with him. And he understands this is the quickest way of getting us back. Yeah, actually that's what we were mentioning before. That's one of the arguments the atheists give. That they say, how could there be a God? Because he designed this world so everybody's miserable. Everything goes wrong. So my answer is, and Prabhupada's answer and Krishna's answer is, Krishna deliberately designed everything so it'll go wrong. And the reason for that is so you understand you're not meant to be here. It's like saying to the government, how could there be a government because they designed this prison house so it's miserable? Well, obviously they're going to design the prison house. Of course, nowadays in America it's not so miserable. I used to do some prison preaching, and they had like gymnasiums and swimming pools and everything like that. I was just, wow, it's better than living outside. But you know, so prison house is meant to reform the prisoners. So we are all disobedient sons of Krishna and daughters of Krishna, right? Prabhupada said we are originally Krishna conscious entities, and now we're here. So anyway, so whatever Krishna does is for, and he enjoys compassion too, it's for his enjoyment. Just understand that one thing. And we're meant for Krishna's enjoyment. That's all you got to understand. Everything else comes after that. You understand? Everything else, I mean, that's the essence of everything. We're meant, what is our constitutional position? Jivara Swarupa Krishna Das. And then we have the Upanishad, you know, Om Puna, no Ishavashamidam Sarvam Yakin Chacham Jaka. Teneta Chiptina Punjina, Margaret Hawk, you know the verse? Everything is owned and controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything is meant for His pleasure, and He's just lending us things to be used in His service. So, any other questions? Interesting analysis, yeah.
Mark, you said you preach in prisons. Were the prisoners receptive to the Krishna consciousness?
Oh, they're very receptive until they get out.
Oh.
I don't do that preaching anymore because I got very discouraged.
Oh.
You go into prison, oh yeah. Yeah, Hare Krishna, give us some prasadam. I said, okay. I even initiated a few prisoners
Oh,
too.
wow. They are still in the movement? No? Oh, wow.
Once they get out.
Go say it again.
Once they get out, you know, it's like an artificial brahmachari ashram.
That's what it is.
So I sort of got discouraged from doing that because of, I mean, I'm sure there's some success cases. And I'm sure we should preach in the prisons. I'm not denying that. However, I would hesitate before giving anyone initiation in prison. I mean, obviously we preach everywhere. But, you know, it's just like, what is that called? Smarshan Vairagya. You know, renunciation of the crematorium. You know, the crematorium, everyone's renounced. Oh yes, we're not the body. Maharaj, read the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita to us. Dehinos men yatade kol maram duram jata tatha dehanduras prapti radiras patra namuyati. Oh yes. Oh, my poor little whatever it is, passed away, and he's gone on to a better life, and we're chanting Hare Krishna for him. Oh, so thank you, Maharaji. And then after that, you know, then Kava. That's beautiful. I had an interesting experience. I was at a funeral recently. Actually, it's interesting when you get to be my age, you practically either go to a funeral every week or hear about someone dying every week. Or twice or three times a week, you're praying for someone in the hospital. I mean, you see birth, death, disease, old age, you know, practically every day. So anyway, I went to a funeral one time. This was must have been about 8 months ago or something. And it was an Indian family. And we went to the crematorium and we were chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And then I learned why ladies aren't supposed to be at crematoriums. Because they started wailing. And the men said, get rid of this kirtan, we want our wives to wail. And I was thinking, how inauspicious. The soul is being freed from this bodily entanglement. That's the reason for cremation. And doesn't get a chance to hear the holy name, just gets a chance to hear all the women wailing. So that's why there's an injunction in the Vedic literatures that ladies are not supposed to go to the crematorium, because just supposed to be chanting, you know, Ram Nam Sachahe, like you do in Fiji. Supposed to be chanting the holy names, and that purifies the atmosphere. But wailing actually pierces the ether. It's actually not, at a crematorium, it's not auspicious. So, anyway, so people, as Smarshan Vairagya, which means Prabhupada said that people become very renounced when they go to the crematorium or the funeral. So if you put people in a certain situation, but once that situation is removed, then there's no impetus to remain like that. Just like Krishna says in the Gita, Chaturvidha bhajanti mam. He said 4 types of people approach me. Those who were looking for wealth, those who were looking for knowledge, those who are inquisitive, or those in distress. So what we often find is that when those impetuses for joining Krishna consciousness go away, that the person doesn't often stay. You understand? Let's say, you join the Hare Krishna movement because you see let's say you're in a poor country and join the movement because you basically need to eat. And it's very nice, you get prasadam and everything like that. And then after a while, that impetus is no longer there, that motivation is no longer there. So in the meantime, you have to transform your motivation to actually be Krishna conscious or to love Krishna. If you don't transform it, then it won't be steady. Like Dhruva Maharaj, he had a mixed motivation, obviously. His motivation was for a kingdom greater than that of Lord Brahma. But it got transformed. So he gave up that material motivation. If you don't give up your material motivation, then it's hard, then you're not going to be steady in devotional service. So that's the thing about prison. You preach in the prisons, and people feel very much relieved because you're preaching the holy names and everything like that. But that's because they're in such a situation, a distressful situation. So anyway, that's why I don't do that anymore. Yes.
Maharaj, you know how in ISKCON, they're keeping books in motels, and there's another project started to keep books in all the hospitals.
Yeah.
Do you think the keeping books in prison would they allow, and then would it help?
I think it's good. Yeah. I think it's good. I mean, at least you're starting the people on their Krishna conscious path. See, one thing I've realized after 200 years in the Hare Krishna movement is that not that everybody's going to become a pure devotee in this lifetime. I sort of had unrealistic expectations of people when I first joined the movement, Oh, they're taking initiation back to home, back to Godhead in this lifetime. But then I realized that devotional service is a multi-lifetime endeavor. That's why Krishna says, Bohanam Janmadavante Gyanam. So then part of our duty is to actually start people on the path. And if they just read Bhagavad Gita or see the Bhagavad Gita, then they're starting on the path. They take a little prasadam, then they start on the path. This is called the Bhakti Lata Bij. You're implanting the original seed of the creeper of